Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the webinar with Lorien KPMG, Inclusivity and Diversity, How to Create Change with Limited Resources. I'm joined today by my colleague Darren Topping, Business Solutions Director at Lorien. Darren and I work at Lorien, which is a leading provider of tech, transformation and professional recruitment solutions. Hopefully, a bit of housekeeping just first before I introduce our guests. You can ask questions throughout, please do. We're going to collate them and we'll have some time at the end of the session. It'll be about a 45-minute webinar where we can take your questions and throw those to our guests for further discussion. But we've got quite a few questions that Darren and I prepared and would like to talk to Anna, Susan and Senda about now. So without further ado, let me introduce our guests. So we're joined today by Anna Somaiya. Anna is KPMG's Director of IT Transformation and she's the founder and leader of IT's Her Future. Anna joined KPMG in 2015 after an impressive career at Honda, and she founded IT's Her Future as a response to a lack of diversity within KPMG's technology function. It's now a firm-wide programme to articulate, implement and embed changes made by KPMG in attracting, recruiting, promoting and retaining women in technology. The hard work has seen the female headcount raised from 26% to 42% between 2015 and 2019, and the flagship mentoring scheme sees 41% of its mentees promoted annually. Amongst other awards, Anna has recently won the MCA Award for Outstanding Achievement for her work with IT's Her Future. Good to have you on. Thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
Next, we have Susan Miller-Smith. Susan is a proven leader and advisor of people change. This experience was gained by senior HR roles at organisations such as Barclays, UBS and Lehman Brothers. Susan has also spent an invaluable period advising global organisations around change projects and colleague investment programmes. Over the last 5 years, she's held HR lead roles for tax and audit, and she's now the acting head of inclusion, diversity and social equality for KPMG in the UK. Thank you for joining us, Susan. And last but by no means least, Senda Kavindale. Senda is a programme lead for the Black Lives Action Plan and co-chair of the African and Caribbean Network, KPMG. She has 15 years experience working across various client-facing and people management roles within the firm. As chair of the African and Caribbean Network, she's recognised as a founding member of the award-winning Black Heritage Reverse Mentoring Programme. Her relentless passion for driving the firm's inclusion and diversity agenda as a member of the Black Heritage Working Group has led to her recent appointment as Programme Lead for the BLA. So thank you very much for joining us, Senda, Anna and Susan. So for those of you who don't know Lorien, we have a 40-year heritage of providing managed service programmes, recruitment process outsourcing and staffing. We place around 10,000 candidates every year into our programmes, and we red thread inclusivity throughout each solution, from sourcing techniques to engagement and assessment. Our clients include brands such as Nationwide, Reassure, and obviously KPMG. We've worked with KPMG for 7 years now, providing a permanent recruitment solution and supporting the firm's I&D agenda. Thank you for joining us today. We've really been looking forward to it. So without further ado, I'll hand over to my colleague Darren and we'll move into the webinar.
Thank you again, everyone who's joining us today. The webinar today is all about how we can create and actually continue to push for I&D change in the current world landscape that's to say the least changeable. A recent survey a couple of months ago now showed that within talent acquisition leaders, I&D had actually slipped as low as 7th in terms of their business priorities. What we really want to get out of today is everyone to walk away with some real quality information as to how they can kickstart or reinvigorate their I&D programs. To kick off with you then, Anna, would you mind introducing the IT's Her Future program and some of the achievements that you and your team have made so far?
Yeah, sure. So good morning, everybody. I think it's still morning, yes. So IT's Her Future, in the introduction that Joanna just gave, is our signature programme in KPMG that's tackling gender diversity right across the life cycle. So we look at how we can transform the way KPMG attracts, recruits, promotes, retains women, plus also some of the work that we're doing in the wider community. When I started IT's Her Future back in 2015, I purposely set up IT's Her Future not as a network, but as an action group. And today it's made made up of both male and female volunteers. It's been instrumental in improving the way that we promote and retain KPMG's talented women in technology. I started, when I set this up as well, you know, IT's Our Future is one of many diversity initiatives that KPMG has. And I was very specific that I wanted to focus this on women in technology. And I quite often get asked, why do we focus just on women? Well, the reality is that actually, as we have been doing huge amounts of work in improving our gender parity in technology, we've also seen a lot of other diversity aspects improve, whether that will be ethnicity, disability, or LGBTQ as well. So gender parity, you know, to get 42% of women in technology isn't about just recruiting and attracting white women as well. So actually with that comes all the other aspects of diversity as well. In terms of some of our results, we've now got 12 work streams right across. Whilst this isn't my day job, and it's not the day job of many of our volunteers, we have put in action plans right across to make sure that collectively everybody is spending at least about 10 minutes a day. And by doing 10 minutes a day, collectively, we're actually doing quite a lot. And my role is really to make sure that we are focusing on the right thing. So setting the vision, setting the strategy, the direction, and making sure that our goals and objectives are really clear, and then empowering our volunteers to be able to act out on some of those. So in terms of some of the results we've seen some of the women, when we started in 2015, we had 26% of women across our technology capabilities. That's now 42%. We've seen 41% of the women on the IT's Our Future mentoring scheme secure promotion since joining, and the mentoring scheme particularly has grown from 20 mentees to over 300 plus, and it's continually being adopted by KPMG global member firms, and recently we've also taken that to clients. We've transformed the way KPMG recruit graduates and experienced professional women as well. And we've seen a rise from 36% of female graduates in 2015 to 54%. We've completely overhauled our vacancy to onboarding processes, with working closely with our recruitment teams and our recruiters such as Lorien, into making sure that, you know, our job descriptions have strong growth mindset. The channels that we go to advertise some of those job descriptions are more diverse and open as well. We've done exciting work around women in tech careers evenings and giving information and hiring managers and candidates the opportunity to ask questions about particular roles as well. And we've also supported the wider community through our Future Leaders technology programme, which supports all the way from year 5 to year 9, starting the talent pipeline much earlier, exposing them to the exciting world of technology careers, and challenging some of those stereotypical views about working in technology. During COVID, we had to quickly turn a lot of these programs into virtual programs, and so our coding program actually, which teaches children around Python coding, that actually reached 19,000 students and went viral, you know, over 30 countries as well. So we've got a really wide range of results since 2015, and we continue to work and collaborate right across our diversity initiatives in KPMG as well.
That's amazing. Thanks, Anna. I think there's such a strong message in there that if we all spent just 10 minutes a day focusing on these kind of programs, then we couldn't help but gain momentum. And I couldn't agree more that, especially within gender diversity and technology, that pipeline has to start much earlier, when girls are starting looking at STEM subjects in school. So that's the first question to kick us off then. As we all know, the pandemic's left us struggling for cash, businesses struggling for cash, and I&D projects and programs are quite commonly cut. What's the business case for I&D here, and why is I&D more important now than ever before?
Yeah, I think you're right. So I think as businesses in the short term face, you know, kind of limited revenues, we're seeing and hearing organisations cutting in the short term their I&D budgets and firms pulling back from I&D programmes. But I personally think that I&D programmes are more important now than ever, as I think, you know, it could actually place organisations at a disadvantage for the longer term. If we think about companies as they start to stabilise and drive towards business recovery, resilience, and, you know, rethink, reimagine some of those new normals, we need to ensure that I&D remains a core part of the firm's agenda during the downturn and beyond. Repeatedly, we see in research that, you know, firms that have more diverse teams better perform, are in a better position to create more kind of adaptive, effective teams, are more likely to recognise diversity as a competitive advantage. So I think investing in I&D now is actually going to be an opportunity to bounce back more quickly from the crisis. And on a second point, I think, you know, our programme, IT's Her Future, and other diversity programmes at KPMG, we've seen firsthand the benefits of programmes by having these I&D programmes that it's had on our people, and particularly on mental health. You know, we know that as more people work virtually, whilst that brings many advantages, it can potentially leave people feeling quite isolated. And so actually having programs like IT's Her Future, where our mentors or our coaches are checking in with our people and colleagues and seeing how they're feeling, I think it's really equally important during this time. So it supports us not only, you know, it supports us around how we engage and continue to retain that talent, I think.
Great, thank you. And if I think about our client base and some potential new customers that we go and speak to, I&D still is and always has been a really key focus for them, but they aren't always in a position to invest financially. In your experience, how would you recommend that they kickstart an I&D program with limited or no budget?
Yeah, I think the mistake people often make is they start off being, I mean, the problem is huge, right? And you can start off being really ambitious, either with money or with goals, and asking for funding quite quickly without really knowing what you want to do and why you want to do it or how you want to get started, and having the right buy-in. You know, I've heard clients talk openly about getting quite disheartened and disengaged because they start with all the right intentions, but then, you know, as the problem is so big, it becomes quite overwhelming, and then before you know it, you actually haven't achieved much. So I think first of all, you can't only do diversity from a bottom-up approach. It does need top-down and bottom-up. So one of the first things that I did for IT's Her Future is, in order to get the buy-in from a top-down perspective, is take a really data-driven approach, right? And so map out my data, KPIs, understand where my kind of heat spots are, my red, amber, greens, and where I'm going to kind of focus on and target. And against that, look at the vision and the strategy for the longer term, and set almost like a clear set of actions and steps. Set those kind of goals and objectives and measure them, and really decide on this year the one or two small things that I want to do really well, and kind of go from there. Then to get that kind of sponsor and senior levels to champion you and get behind you. I also worked really hard to get volunteers on board that believed in the vision and the strategy. So when I got started, I went out and recruited volunteers to come in and get a lot of our millennials and our graduates that are really passionate about this to come on board and to start helping them. And in return, I'm creating a really safe environment for them to practice some of their skills, whether it'll be how to do project management or strategy or negotiation, or empower them to lead on a particular work stream, which, you know, younger in your roles, you might not necessarily get when you're immediately put out on client delivery. And really setting that goal that this is discretionary contribution, therefore let's do 10 minutes, everybody do 10 minutes a day, but focus on those one or two things. And I also think one of the biggest importance for IT's the Future has been, we know our role and we know the role of other people that they play within our organisation. So our action group is kind of the voice of women, and we challenge status quo using research and data-driven approach. But our job is not to do everyone's job, and therefore there are people like recruiters that their job is to do that. Our job is to kind of get them to understand and buy into our vision and our strategy. And that's the only way that any changes we want to make in order for them to be sustainable for the future is that we can embed those in business as usual as quickly as possible. And then it's about celebrating those small successes and starting to market what we've done, how we've done it, and to create more opportunities and promote what we've been doing in order to gain more volunteers, and then to continually just refresh that strategy on a regular basis and set the next 2 steps that we want to do, for example. So that's how we've kind of done it in KPMG.
That's great, thank you, Anna. I think it's so important, and you mentioned right at the start of the process to look at your data and know what your starting point is and where any particular blockages are, where talent isn't flowing through. So that was a great answer. Thank you so much.
I have a quick follow-up question, actually, Anna. You talked about volunteers, and I know you've grown that kind of that mass of people significantly over the years. How do they roll on and roll off and do something else, or do you have volunteers who kind of have done several years of support with you, or how have you kind of sold that opportunity to people within the firm to get involved and stay involved?
Yeah, so our volunteers have just been growing and growing. You know, we've gone from me to 5 to then over 90, and I would say we've got probably about 60 active members that are on our work streams collectively supporting IT's the Future. But we have over 90 mentors every month that are giving an hour a month to help mentor and coach some of our women in technology. I think the key thing is that quite often as we meet as a group, we meet every 2 weeks. We have a 30-minute short, sharp phone call on how things are progressing. So you do sort of have to put a level of program governance into this. It can't all just be at the side of the desk. You know, a little bit of rigor and structure needs to come from this. And then it's about empowering those workstream leads to really feel like, and we've got E-grades that have got senior managers, you know, we've got graduates that have got senior managers reporting into them, where they're leading on a work stream and they're learning on how to delegate work, how to lead work streams. So they're getting a lot from it as well. In KPMG, we really evaluate our colleagues on you know, client delivery, but also living our KPMG values and what discretionary contribution we're making in terms of building up our capability, our practice, or our people. And so IT's the Future plays a big part in that, in terms of the living the values of mentoring and coaching, or helping to get more women in technology. And that could be, you know, going to milk rounds at universities and championing and getting more pipeline. It could be around leading a work stream, all of which at the end of the year leads to their feedback and their personal case in promotion and growth as an individual. And that's why a lot of people do it, aside from also the sense of purpose and passion that they get from running a program like IT's the Future as well.
Thanks. I can see why it's gained such momentum. Let's talk to Susan and Senda now. So Susan, you're interim head of inclusion, diversity and social equality at KPMG, and Senda, you lead the Black Talent Programme, which we understand is launching imminently across the firm. Before Senda talks to us a bit about the Black Talent Programme, Susan, will you tell us a bit about your role, responsibilities, some of the wider IDSC programmes across KPMG that you're involved in? And KPMG celebrates its 150th year this year, I think. So great opportunity to do some positive good.
Yeah, it does. Indeed, we in our history, we employed the first female accountant. So we have a long history of diversity in our mix. My role covers all of the various initiatives that we have to support what are our publicly stated goals. We were one of the first of the professional services firms to publish our targets, and we have worked long and hard to ensure that we have frameworks in place to both meet those targets and ultimately get to a scenario where at every grade we are fully represented in a way that reflects our communities, and that those people are engaged and excited about their careers at KPMG. That's when we know we're done. And I think many organisations will say to you that they're actually not sure where to start. And that's why the things we do in KPMG should galvanise leaders to exercise that discretionary effort that Anna described, and do their own thing on the ground and make that right for the sub-communities they're in. But I want to come back to Darren's question in terms of, programmes are getting cut. That's not my experience at all. Indeed, since the murder of George Floyd, we have been inundated with questions from our clients and just broader community to ask how we might rise up and how we can help to start programs in other firms. And I think as I think about how you tackle this when you're taking care of people's careers, you want to make sure that your organisation can maintain the careers of the people that work there. But as I think about it, so many of these things are free or required within your legislation. So every organisation has to publish its gender pay gap. That's been a requirement for some time now. Many, like us, also publish things like ethnicity. How your leaders behave is free. So to act as an inclusive leader, to consider asking their colleagues to declare how they identify, and then ensuring all of your people processes, whether that be pay, promotions, recruitment, performance, or talent identification and development, that you have the right representation at every grade across however you evaluate or you pay people. We call that red threading in our people processes, and that didn't cost anything. It was just brave. And yes, it was hard to do, because often we are asking people to do things which they don't feel versed in. So sometimes they feel less comfortable. And I'd like Senda to talk about the Black Lives Action Plan that she's leading in a second. But ultimately, your employees can help you too. So we will have, as at today, 14 employee networks. That includes faith networks. And they act as viral leaders in terms of initiatives. So when we celebrate things like our Black History Month, Senda and her colleagues are right out front of that, telling us how we should celebrate this, and really helping us bring that to life in what is a 16,000 person organisation. In the same way as our Be Mindful network will focus on mental health and well-being, and our Workability network will look at disability, etc., etc. So there's so many things you can do for free. The key thing is to be brave, to have hope, to ask those questions, and to allow a platform where inspired and motivated leaders like Anna can do something that says to our clients that we embrace diversity. And I believe, from an ESG perspective, if you are not making the right choices for your organisation and deciding to do that now, they will choose somebody that does, somebody that greater represents their values. And so IDSC is not only great in terms of representing your communities, it's great for the soul, but also it will give you a competitive edge at the point where clients are making choices about whether they work with you or not. Now, on our Black Lives Action Plan, this is a really important one, and I think one that, in terms of your attendees today, should hear about, because this is how we have galvanized what we were already doing, and really sought to invest and inject more of the things that we had planned over a more pacey program timeline. So I'd love it if Senda could talk us through that.
Susan, for the introduction. I'm delighted to be leading on KPMG's Black Lives Action Plan. As Susan mentioned, this program is really about red threading our inclusion and diversity and social equality strategy through everything that we do at KPMG. The focus is predominantly on progression of our Black talent, education of our non-Black colleagues about understanding what it really means to be a Black individual in professional services and also within society. And it's about leadership and accountability. The focus there is about the top-down approach, really ensuring that our strategy is red-threaded through all our people processes and in our everyday actions of our leaders at the firm. So essentially, we have a 5-point action plan which seeks to address these. I want to talk a little bit about progression. We know that in many firms, the number of Black colleagues is not proportionate to our other race ethnicities. And really this progression issue is around colleagues having those opportunities to develop their careers, to progress and attain the next level of their careers. And within that, we're running a couple of programs. We have the Black Talent Program that Joe mentioned earlier, and that simply is about putting that real focus on providing those opportunities and the platform for colleagues to progress around talent. We have some existing initiatives. We are now under this action plan embedding those existing initiatives and really opening up that platform to a wide variety of colleagues to engage. As a firm, we are fantastic with our graduate recruitment program. We have within that the Black Talent Insight program, which is our attraction program in its second year of running. Last year, we had about 40 applicants. We're looking to double that number this year. Within that, we have our manager level colleagues who do have some challenges at progressing their career for obvious reasons. I'm sure many of you on this call will appreciate that and identify with these challenges within your organizations. And what the action plan does is it provides that opportunity for middle managers to progress to the next level of their careers. I'm also working closely with our recruitment teams to attract recruitment at middle manager level and also senior hire recruitment. On education, I want to underline our allyship program, which is in its infancy. The action plan itself has attracted a huge number of allies to support us with running this. We have approximately 1,000 allies who have now registered, and the focus there is to really support our colleagues with attaining the progression levels. But there's also an important facet around that is about educating themselves. We're providing and curating content through our learning platforms to enable our colleagues to educate, to really deep dive and delve into the history of Black culture and understand some of the challenges that our colleagues have been facing inside and outside of the organizations, and helping them to better learn how they can support our colleagues to reduce the instances of systemic bias within the organization. Leadership and accountability shows that there's a real focus there and attention from our leaders. Senior leaders in the firm, our expo board are really supportive to ensure that we're driving and embedding the action plan throughout the organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Senda and Susan for sharing that. And I think, Senda, as you've mentioned in the past, it's so often that the Black stats and the performance of Black colleagues that can be lost within overall BAME stats. So it's really encouraging to hear about the Black Talent Programme and some of those strands that you're launching and the passion and the allies that you've got behind that. So thank you. So question to both of you now. As an I&D leader, what 5 things would you recommend people or businesses do in the next month to make a difference to inclusion and diversity? And it can be from a an organisational perspective or an individual perspective. What's your kind of top tips for the next looking forward?
So I mean, we're obviously quite mature on our journey here, and if you're a leader of an organisation, there are some really robust steps that you can take, some of which I've mentioned. 1, set yourselves targets and publicly state those targets so that your organisation feels accountable for them, and this becomes a key part of your strategy. 2, ask your colleagues to declare. It's the ultimate test of being how inclusive an organisation is if your colleagues don't want to declare. And it gives you an indicator both of who works there and who doesn't want to tell you about themselves, because that's concern in itself. And monitor that to your targets. 3, check all of your people processes and see where your diverse talent is coming through. Look for trends in that data. As Anna and Senda have said, look at your recruitment. It is not illegal to target specific groups. And the work you do with us, for example, Joe, we target very diverse groups. We don't select on the basis of those groups, but we do target them. And then I suppose the 5th thing is have the really difficult conversations. Have a conversation about micro acts of aggression. Ask your diverse colleagues their experiences, because we all want to believe our organisation does not have high levels of bias. But sometimes some of the things that come out of our colleagues' mouths, you have to ask yourself if they even understand the impact that's having on other people. You know, we've heard about some really troubling things in relation to our Black talent. You know, ask questions, you know, where do you come from? You're so articulate. You know, one that really concerned me was a newly promoted individual who identifies as Black, going to a client meeting very excited and being asked by someone there if she could get him a cup of tea. Ask your people what's happened to them, and then ask yourself, would you be comfortable with that, and why is that applied to particular groups and not others? So those would be my 5 things.
Thank you. In that situation where you have identified that there are issues with an individual or even a business area, like how do you actually go and have that conversation? What advice would you give to the listeners to approach it? Because it is difficult to have. It's people are not necessarily open to talking about the actual acts of microaggression, etc. But then to actually then act on them from your perspective as a HR leader, in your experience, be really interested to hear any advice you can share there.
Well, a few things. I mean, we appreciate we're a relatively sophisticated organisation in this regard. So we have individuals through our organisation called ethics champions. So if somebody experiences something they're uncomfortable with, they can go and have that conversation with an ethics champion. They don't need to come straight to someone like me as an HR business partner and say, I want to raise a complaint. They might want to talk it through. And we briefed our ethics champions in terms of how they might respond and to be super sensitive to somebody's learned experience. For our Black talent, when something like that happens, it's like a bruise being hit again and again and again. So you may think it's a throwaway comment, but for somebody who identifies differently, it's one of 20 comments. In terms of the action we have taken, we have terminated the employment of people who continue to have a view that others find offensive. Mm-hmm. So we have had an interesting response to what is a really proud and brave action plan from those who have an adverse view. But we feel quite strongly that adverse view against Black colleagues in this day and age is just ignorance, and we won't tolerate it. So we have responded in a way that is really strong in that regard, because we just won't have it. And then we're really well advised. We work with Dr. John Amici. Those of you that enjoy the ITV News will have seen him talking. He's an absolute legend and incredibly inspirational. And he said a few things to us that really matter. One, he said, Black colleagues are not your library, they're not your librarians. If you want to educate yourself, do it. Don't ask somebody else. So we have stood up a program there to really base people's understanding in education. But also I think it's not okay just to be anti-racism. You've got to be anti-racist. And I recall a story of a very elderly person who I was having a conversation with, who said, wow, Meghan Markle in the royal family, a Black person in the royal family. And clearly I could have sought not to have this conversation. I could have spared her feelings, but it offended me. And so I said to her, you said that out loud, right? And that's not okay. And, you know, she giggled it off, but my point was made. We feel so strongly about it that in our code of conduct this year, we will have anti-racism training. And guess what? You can't find that with any learning provider. We had to create it ourselves, but it really is that important.
Thank you. Now I know we've got a couple of questions on the chat, and just looking at time might be sensible to certainly let's go with the first one on there, which I think will be relevant for Senda and Susan. So the question is, how do you position a Black career development / talent program within an organisation to try and avoid unintended negative responses from other ethnicities who may also be underrepresented?
Senda, do you want to take that?
Thank you. Yes, Susan, thank you. That's a really good question that you ask. I would say we originally, prior to the demise of the whole George Floyd incident, had faced these challenges where Black colleagues, we had to rather strike a balance, to your point about the unintended negative consequences of setting up some of these programs. But actually what we've done is we've listened to our Black colleagues from the African and Caribbean Network and asked them specifically what they would like to see in terms of supporting them with their career development. We've engaged with them. We have undertaken in-depth research with them, understanding what gaps they have, and also to enable us to provide them with a relevant platform that will really bolster their own learnings and development. And actually, I see this more as a positive, because what this does is it sets up a level playing field. And once you have that engagement from the leadership and that accountability, setting the tone from the top, it means we're able actually to focus on our Black talent for now, because Black lives matter, as we all know, for obvious reasons. That doesn't mean to say that next year we won't be focused on any other race ethnicities, but it is current and it is in the moment, and it is our focus, because we have to sort out the level playing field. Yeah, Susan, do you want to add to that?
I completely agree with you, and I think, to speak really frankly, the reason we're focusing on this group right now is because this is a group with a knee on its neck, literally. And we already had programs in place that we were excited about. We had the Black Insights program looking at graduates. We had, were already in our third cohort of our Black Talent Reverse Mentoring program. So our partners are reverse mentored by our Black talent. And we had already conceived of and were in the build phase of our Black Talent program, which is top down. What we also have is something called the GROW program, which is a learning intervention to build leadership skills, confidence, and a voice in those who identify differently. Of the, I think we're on cohort 28 of that. We've been running that for 3 years. 10% of the participation in that has been our Black talent. So these were things we were already doing. We don't just invest in one thing. We look across all ways that people identify. We set targets for gender, ethnicity, Black heritage separately, disability, LGBT plus, and we have an intention that we will seek to publish pay gaps for those more defined groups over time, because they are as important as one another. But as I say, this is the one that this year we want to try and tackle a 400-year-old problem, and we're very proud to be doing that now.
Great, thank you. Got a few more questions. Let's see. We've got a question here around ATSs that support blind recruitment. I don't know if anyone in the team, and Darren included, might have a view on that. I know KPMG is implementing a new ATS at the moment, so I don't know if that's been captured in that initial rollout.
Yeah, I have definitely requested it in that rollout. Because not only is it helpful, but it sends a statement externally that you know, you will be assessed on the value of your skills, not on how you identify. But where we do ask people to identify it coming into our recruitment process, because we have a mandate of 50-50 on gender and always a diverse shortlist, as you know, Jo. So our suppliers are retained on the basis of their ability to help us with these goals. So all of these things come into the mix in the way we recruit.
Yeah, most major ATS systems now fully support blind candidate and CV submission, Joe, and that is incredibly helpful. I think just tacking onto that, I think what's really important is a lot of ATS systems now have marketing modules, and they do the automated job posting and stuff like that, and that's where I think you've got to be really mindful of the imagery and the language that goes into those job postings to make sure that even though candidates are sending their details through and the hiring manager can't see names, etc., that imagery and the language that you use is so important, making candidates feel included, like it's an inclusive organisation to even make that application in the first place.
Yeah, and the thing I'd add to that, Darren, is that isn't the only answer. You've also got to ensure that those recruiting almost don't need that. That they have the ability to see beyond that and look to the skills. I mean, if I think about my own team, it's we set ourselves a target of 4.2% Black heritage. My own team's 20% Black heritage, because you get to that point when you are au fait of all things diversity, where you're just looking at people's skills. You don't really care about where they come from or how to identify.
Thank you. Another question: is it possible to share the anti-racism training? You mentioned you built this in-house, but might be something you could consult on, perhaps as a business, maybe.
Absolutely, for a small fee. Because I can guarantee we did ask. We are the only ones that have that. And to help you, we have focused on micro acts. So it's a module that talks about micro acts and has people respond to that. If you ask your own colleague base about the micro acts, you will have your own content and it will be relevant for your organisation, but more than happy to have that conversation.
Great, thank you. And Senda, Senda and Anna might be a good question for you. In terms of attracting talent in underrepresented areas, I know that you've been doing some work, particularly Senda, with some suppliers at the more senior levels, which is currently managed in-house at KPMG. And the question is, are there any methods you recommend in terms of specific talent pooling for underrepresented areas? Any suppliers perhaps, or any avenues, or any areas that you might recommend this guest reaching out to enable them to talent pool in underrepresented areas?
That's Senda or to myself?
Oh,
Senda want to take it first?
Yeah, I to either.
Thank you. I'll just take that first. In terms of Black talent, I'll be perfectly honest with you, it is a real challenge at senior level, because inevitably there is a small talent pool that we are tapping into. These are people who are very senior in their own respective organizations, and they have their own career trajectory within that space. We're fortunate enough actually within KPMG ourselves to have a senior hire recruitment specialist who recently joined our firm, and he is in the process of having initial conversations with recruiters. I would say, generally speaking, it depends obviously what sector, industry your organization is looking at. In terms of, for us, professional services, we are tapping into a wide range of sector and industry expertise, and we are talking to the household names that you would all be familiar with on this call to understand what level of talent they've got and who. And really, it's about building a network. I think that is fundamental. We are also tapping into our own senior colleagues who have already an established network and working together to attract senior talent. Anna, do you want to build on to that?
Yeah, well, so my area is obviously women in technology. The industry, back in 2004, we had 21% of women in technology in the labour workforce. That's gone down to 17%, and more recently down to 14%. So as demand for technology grows, we know the supply of female talent in technology is significantly reducing. And therefore, for me to continually have we've gone from 26% to 42%. That does mean thinking out of the box, right? And when I talked about overhauling our experienced hires, that means, one process doesn't fit all. It means us doing things differently for women in technology. So we've had to, from vacancy to onboarding, we've had to rewrite job descriptions. So they are a slightly more fluffier. They use more growth mindset language. So it's not about coming and working for the best team with the best clients and being the best you are. It's more about come and join a fun growing team where your skills will be developed and nurtured in order to reach your full potential. It's about producing more information packs. We know, talking to our recruiters, women ask 30 more questions than men do. And actually, it's far easier to recruit men than it is women, because they just don't keep going backwards and forwards like women do. So what can we do to ensure some of those unanswered questions for women are answered early and quickly? We've built recruitment packs that we can give to potential candidates, and it sort of talks about, while it can't talk about the clients we work with, it gives them a feel of what it's like to come and work in KPMG, or what support will be available to them when they join KPMG, what some of our learning and development programs or coaching or mentoring programs that will be there to support them. And then we've thought totally out of the box, right, in terms of women in tech careers evenings. So that's a bit like Senda was saying, it's about equalizing that playing field. And so we've gone out to LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, different channels, using these growth mindset job descriptions in order to create a Women in Tech Careers Evening, not to fast track them to interviews, but to give them the information to take their CV and to talk to real hiring managers about what potential roles could they do, where do their skills best suit, and to actually make sure that when we shortlist on particular roles, we've got proportionality, we've got equal men and women applying for those jobs, and ultimately talent wins. In our London event that we did, we had 150 women come, of which we recruited over 15 to 20 women, and in Manchester we had 75 women come, of which we again recruited around 10 women. And so it's just been a really positive action that we've taken. We've seen that in our architecture practice, where it was predominantly male, taking these actions, we're actually seeing that that's gone from almost like 0% to 27% female with senior hires, working with Lorien and working with the IT to Her Future team to really make sure that we're making those positive interventions. So hopefully that's helped answer that from a female perspective. It is about thinking out of the box. It's about tapping into your networks, and it's about, not just doing the standard processes that everyone else is doing. It's thinking differently around what can we do to attract those women, because they are out there. One thing I've been really good at is the award ceremonies. If we took, I don't know, We Are Tech Women or We Are in the City, we have thousands and thousands of women that get nominated in technology for those roles. That's a whole talent pool list just there for yourself to kind of grab and look at. Equally, when we go to Women of Silicon Roundabout, there is a question on GDPR. It's really important that at these events, if you want to target these, that you ask requests. So we make sure that we say we get their consent in terms of, are we able to put you on our long talent list pool for the future? Are you happy for us to contact you? Do you want to leave us a CV, etc.? And we go through the kind of GDPR checklist and make sure that that is accepted. If they say no to any of those, then of course we don't. But if they are comfortable with that, then they remain on our talent pool list for when we are hiring in the future.
You've given away some of your trade secrets there, Anna, definitely, I think.
Well, sharing, we're all in the problem together is what I say. So
Here. There are two more questions, so I'm going to quickly ask them and we'll maybe do a 1-minute answer, so no one's left out. Thank you for staying on. Question here around the challenge for the requirement of hitting your 50-50 gender split on shortlist when the female talent pool is only circa 17%. So I think, ultimately, Anna and Susan, is that 50-50 realistic is the question, and how do we actually hit that?
It is realistic, and unfortunately most organisations are not trying to hire that entire 17% in terms of where we are right now. So if there's a realistic time in terms of recruitment, it's right now. We had our managing partner make it really clear, if you didn't hit it, you had to stop recruiting. So that, in a very quick answer, that's how we made it work for us.
And I think that some of the programmes bringing females up through the ranks, and some of the programmes within college and university is really helping, I think, at the bottom of the pipeline, a lot of returner programmes as well, and retraining programmes that we're seeing as Lorien across the business. And the last question, if it's there, it might have disappeared. Do you have any plans as a business ahead of Ada Lovelace Day next month?
Say that again?
Do you have any plans as a business ahead of Ada Lovelace Day next month?
Well, it's Black History Month next month. So we absolutely will be celebrating that. Senda, did you want to give 1 minute on what we're doing?
Yes, thanks, Susan. Yeah, we have a number of events that we will be running throughout the month of October to shine a spotlight on Black talent, as it were, in a nutshell. We're looking at engaging with some different speakers who will be hosting, but really it is about shining the spotlight, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and I think Ada Lovelace, focusing on STEM, certainly from IT's Her Future, we're going to be profiling women working in technology, profiling women that are working really hard campaigning on gender equality within the industry. We're also looking at what can we do with our next generation leaders program to get something out virtually to our younger generation as well. So there is quite a bit of preparation around that particular day, because it's very much celebrated from a STEM perspective for us in IT's Her Future. Sorry, I'm out of breath. Just ran down the stairs.
You've been on the move, I can tell, during this, Anna. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and thank you, obviously, particularly to Anna, Susan, and Senda. If you would like to get in contact with us at a later date, if you've got any outstanding questions, you can see our details on the screen here. Feel free to reach out to any one of us and be happy to engage with you further. But all that remains is to say thank you for listening. Exciting working with KPMG. You're doing some amazing work, and not unsurprisingly continuing to be an employer of choice. Thank you again for joining us, and have a good rest of your day, everyone.